Hello and welcome to another episode of Raise the Bar, the Sky High and Fly Jump Lab podcast. My name is Troy Haynes, and I am your host. I'm a former UCLA high jumper, longtime coach, and want to be Olympic athlete, gold medalist, trainer, coach, confidant, uh, visionary, whatever you want to call that. Would love to train high level athletes. Just got done with the California State Finals. Had four athletes make it there this year. It's a new high for Sky High and Fly Jump Lab. And one finalist, Kate Hemisath from up north in Sacramento. She came in ninth place at state this year, her senior year. Great. Congratulations to Kate. And then Nate Baca, who was CIF Division One champion down here in the Southland. He got to state, and man, it was a buzzsaw up there this year. It was, first of all, it was just roasting hot, 104 degrees up in Buchanan, Clovis, where Buchanan High School is, and 17 jumpers made 6'6", 2 meters, or close to 2 meters, 2 meters 6'6" and 3/4. So 198. There were 17 guys over. And so very strong year for the North because the Southern section, we sent seven jumpers who made 6'6". So that means, even if they all had made that height, there were 10 more from up north. And I know that at least one, maybe two for sure did not make 6'6" out of the seven we sent. I didn't look at the exact, thing, but that's five of ours, and that would be 12 of theirs. So the North was a little bit stronger this year. Nate jumped 6'6", but didn't get in because 17 is a big number, and they cut the final to 12. So Nate made it on his third, didn't get in. Tyler Malinowski, who was the Bay League champion and went to CIF, made it through CIF prelims this year, which he did not manage to do last year. Made it to the finals and was tied for the lead for Division Two champ until Mr. Gorski from Mater Dei made 6'8" on his second or third try for a huge upset. Was sitting in fourth place, then made 6'6", and there was a three-way tie for second of the guys that had made 6'6" on their first, of which Tyler was one. So then he went to the Masters, made 6'6", and went up to state. At state, he only jumped 6'4", but both he and Nate are only juniors. And so they're looking to come back next year. It's a great experience for them to go. And then we had Derek Johnson from San Pedro High School who made it out of the city section. And Derek had set a new personal best of 6'2", getting there, and also made it in the triple. And it was a pretty terrible schedule. They set the high jump and the triple jump to start at the same time. It was roasting hot. He was running around, and the opening height was 6'4", which is a couple inches higher than he had jumped. So he struggled a little bit, but he's a tough kid and learned a lot. So that was a quick summary of the athletes that I coached. And, now we're kind of settling into an early, restful period for many of my jumpers. But then there's a few Junior Olympics kids. There's a few, others that are, ready to get back into training, or, newbies who just find out that they like the high jump at the end of the season and are, starting to develop their skill sets. So I'm getting to get kind of right back to work. But today we have a special treat. I have coming in for a chat with us Lexie Keller, who is the in the top six in the U.S. of the heptathletes. I had a chance to do a post of her on my site on Instagram, the Sky High and Fly Jump Lab site, when she was still at Colorado State. She has since graduated, but is continuing on and has Olympic dreams. So we're going to be talking with her about that here in just a few minutes. And then later on this afternoon, I have a podcast scheduled with my old coach. And when I say old, he's older than I am, but he's not old. He's a young old. Alan Hankel. Alan has many years of experience coaching high level athletes. I didn't put myself in the high level category, but he did coach me the last time I wanted to jump to try to make the Olympic trials in 1992. It's a long time ago. And he also worked with Doug Nordquist, who made the Olympic team in 1984, jumped forget what he jumped. I think he jumped 230, 7'6.5", and came in fifth. He jumped came in fifth, and then went on with Alan coaching him. I think he jumped that before Alan, but post Olympics and with Alan, Doug jumped 236, which is 7.875, and had some of his best years, and even jumped that 7.875 on a cadaver reconstructed left knee, which is pretty amazing. So anyway, we're going to be talking with Alan, and then a new acquaintance, a friend of ours, Greg Kish, who is one of the parents of one of the athletes at Redondo High School, where I do some work. I just happened to sit next to him at the banquet, and the awards banquet at the end of the year, and found out what he does. And he's in a company that works very closely with the NFL, understands marketing and advertising and all kinds of stuff. And so we're going to kind of be talking with Greg about kind of the state of track and field, where track and field is going, how can we raise the popularity of track and field here in the US? So, and that will be coming up later on today. So, stay tuned stay tuned, like it's a radio station. Stay with us here on Raise the Bar. We'll be right back. We are working on getting sponsors. I keep saying that, but it's coming, we think. So, I've got myself a new advisory group working on that. And so we're kind of practicing the commercial break. And then we'll get Lexie in here and we'll talk heptathlon, and we'll get after it. So stay tuned here on Raise the Bar with Troy Haynes. Hello out there, everybody. Good morning and welcome to another episode of Raise the Bar, the high jump, long jump, triple jump, pole vault, track in general, sports and other things podcast. I'm your host, Troy Haynes. I'm representing UCLA. I was a high jumper at UCLA many, many moons ago. And I'm being joined today by Lexie Keller, who looks like she's just checked in.
Hello.
There you are. I literally
Right.
just said hello and we're ready to rock. So good
Awesome.
morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Busy. Surprisingly, our track season just ended up, with the high schools, and I don't know why I always think might get a small break during the summer because it just doesn't seem to go that way. Um,
Yeah.
how are you doing? How's your season going?
Good. Yeah. I'm adjusting. I just came back from Spain, so kind of like adjusting back into the time zone, getting ready to get back into training. I just did a heptathlon on Saturday, Sunday. So
Okay.
uh, kind of first day back training today after that.
So was that kind of the official end of your season, or was it just what was going on? Was that
Um,
here somewhere?
Yeah, so that HEP just qualified me for US champs in the end of July, beginning of August. So
Okay.
now it's kind of gearing towards the end of my season, but I would say that's kind of like the middle of my
Yeah.
season almost, nearing towards the end. So we'll see where it takes me after that. But
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that's I got precious little experience there. I remember the college season. This is many moons ago, before you were born. My senior year at UCLA was 1986. So, that was the first year I made it to NC2As. And then, after that, it's kind of murky. I don't really know much about what I guess you would call, I don't know if you call it professional, or once you're out of college and you go to those meets that are higher up. I know some of the college athletes would be good enough to get to the US championships, those kinds of things, and qualify for the kind of meets you're qualifying for. Those I
Yeah.
was never able to get to. A one NC2A final was the best I could do. And then so I know the timing gets a lot different, right? The college season, is a lot shorter, kind of ends in June, right? And now, like you said, you're still going and you've got these other meets. So when you were over in Spain, was that to compete or was that just to rest, or what were you doing over there?
Yeah, so I did a full heptathlon there. It's like a world ranked heptathlon meet. So it's like an A grade gold level meet, which basically helps you get more world ranking points.
Right, right.
Good competition. There was a lot of competition just from throughout Europe. So a lot of European athletes going there. So Went out there to try to get a better mark to qualify for USA's, which I did, which was great. And then also just kind of get another hep in before USA's,
Right.
because I've had one, and that was at Mount Sac in like April. So it's kind of been a while.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I wish I'd have known you were there. I had a small, group of athletes at Mount Sac, and I got to meet Joanna Hayes at the
Yeah.
UCLA new coach at UCLA. So I finally got a chance to touch base with her, and then one of my old teammates, John Frazier, is the head coach at Texas State. So we hadn't seen each other
Yeah.
for a long time, and I bumped into Case and O'Reilly. I mean, it was a kind of a fun schmoozing day, So
Awesome. Yeah. He had a
that would have
great
been
year.
would have been a fun deal there. Yeah. So that sometimes it just depends on my mood. Like I was kind of in the mood, and my one girl jumper, she went early. So it was kind of still there right around 12 or 1, and it was starting to heat up a little bit. They're getting to some bigger races and all that. So yeah, I always enjoy Mount Sac. I'm kind of curious what they're going to do with that venue because it's so nice, but it's really almost too nice for just that one meet every year for high school and college slash blah blah blah. And I'm like kind of waiting to see if they're going to try to use it or try to supplant. I don't think it's big enough to go bigger than Eugene, but it's got Nike money flowing through it and all that. So I'm not really
Yeah.
sure.
I guess I didn't realize they don't really host, like, they don't host like high school state championships
Right,
there or other
right,
things. Like, I know they host most of the California high school state championships at Clovis, right?
right.
Buchanan.
At Buchanan, yeah, which is an
Yeah.
okay venue, but it got
Yeah,
too
it's
hot this
great.
year.
But yeah, I'm surprised that they don't utilize that stadium more because it's so nice.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's state of the art, right? You got that huge screen, you can see everything that's going
Exactly.
on. And the only thing I think is maybe the seating is limited. When you look around, it's not a huge stadium. So, like Olympic trials or US championships or something like, I don't know if we could get enough, butts in the seats, as they say, to make it worth the while. But man, I love the venue. And I don't know if, did you ever get a chance to meet Ron Kamako, the coach before he passed?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
No.
Ron was, I competed against Ron in college. So he was a jumper at Arizona State, like, 7'3.5", 4.5 kind of guy. And
Mhm.
he got paralyzed from the shoulders down in a surfing accident. He was body surfing in Hawaii because he's from Hawaii originally. And, he just, he had some close moments. He wasn't sure if he wanted to hang around, and then, became a man of faith. And then he just was an amazing coach. And, he was kind of, I know he really helped get that whole thing, going. He gave me a tour when the stadium was done, and, we went down into the weight room and everything. And it's just really nice. I mean,
Yeah.
that became my dream job, was to actually work at, Mount San Antonio Junior College, because it's just unbelievable facility.
And especially, I mean, I know it's a little different in California with JUCOs. They're a little higher up there, but especially for a JUCO, I'm like,
Oh yeah.
wow.
No, I love your idea. I would campaign immediately for state finals there every year.
Yeah, for sure.
It would be nice. I mean, Cerritos College is pretty nice still, but I think now it's not even close. It's not a contest. Well, hey, we're just talking long, well, I wanted to do more to promote you than talk about what I know about track. So tell us about where you got your start. Did you always do just track and field? I imagine you did. I always picture, tall blondes like you that are heptathletes that played, volleyball and basketball and all that other stuff. So how did you get started?
Yeah, so growing up, my family, my mom especially, tried to get me into every different sport. We tried gymnastics, tennis, basketball, literally anything you name it, I've
Right.
done it growing up. So around like middle school, I found a love for soccer, and a lot of my friends were doing it. So I actually kind of went full force as a soccer player. And my goal was to get recruited by a D1 school for soccer.
Hmm.
I joined a club team. We were traveling. We did all of that. And I I remember going on my first soccer visit, and talking to a few schools. Um, it just didn't feel right. I didn't really have love for the sport anymore. I think soccer and track are very different in that way that track, it's kind of up to you. You choose how much you want to succeed and you
Right.
choose what you put into it. And you can say the same for soccer, but there's other factors. And I
Sure.
kind of just realized I didn't love it anymore. And I was like, what do I do? Like my whole life, I've been planning to get a scholarship, get out of New Mexico, and play a Division I sport. So I kind of was panicking and I was like, I need to find something else to get a scholarship.
Right.
And I had started doing track a little bit. I kind of just did it on the side of soccer. I did, they would throw me in the 4x4s. I would run the 4x1. And I started doing high jump, which I really loved. So that kind of ignited my love for track was high jump specifically.
Hmm.
And I started to see success there a little bit. Um, my junior year, I won state in the high jump, and then
Wow.
my senior year as well. So it kind of, I realized, wow, I have some talent in this, but I don't know where it can take me. I was a 5'6" high jumper and a like 57-second 400 runner, which both
Hmm.
those marks, they're decent, but they couldn't get you really a D1 full ride
Right.
scholarship.
Right. Yeah.
I emailed tons and tons of coaches. I'm like, here's my high jump mark, here's my 400 time, and most of them didn't respond, or they said you need to improve like one of these to wherever,
Right.
maybe like walk on. So all of that, I'm searching and searching, and I emailed Colorado State Coach Ryan Bailey, and he called me immediately. And he was like, "Hey, do you know what the heptathlon is?" And I was like, "I've heard of it.
Right.
My high school coaches mentioned it to me, but I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. It seems like a lot." And he was like, "Just come down on a visit. Like, I think you might be a good heptathlete, and I want to show you around CSU."
Hmm.
And I visited, and I loved it. So that's kind of how everything came to be, and how I ended up doing the heptathlon.
That is awesome. Yeah, there's a real push right now with the roster limits, and all that stuff for, and it's funny to hear you talk about your marks and how they, they're even, then they were kind of tough on you, and I think now it's getting worse in some ways because
For
you only
sure.
have so many roster spots, right? And I don't really know if colleges are as into developing now as they are like, okay, when you show up and you're on the team, you have to be able to score
At conference.
conference. That's the
Yes.
big push I hear right now, and it's like, and I did the same thing as you. I walked on at UCLA. I was a 6'10", three-quarter high jumper in high school. But, California's, I was like, I think I finished ninth at the state meet. It was a really strong year. And it was like,
That's crazy,
I was,
actually.
I know, right? It was amazing, but I was jumping against some all timers. I jumped against John Morris from Cal. He ended up jumping 7'6" or 7, and
Okay.
he was one of those guys that always beat me, even if I PR'd. Like the first time I jumped 7'2", I tell this story all the time. Every PR that I had in college, I never won the meet. I never did
No.
anything. It was like 7 feet. I came in third. I tied with Lee Balkin, and he beat me on misses. And then 7'2", I came in third against Lee Balkin and John Morris. 2 1/4 and 3 1/2, which was my last home meet my senior year. I beat Lee Balkin for the only time in my career. And then I lost to a guy named Mark Reed from Houston in the dual meet because I jumped 3 1/2 and he jumped 4 1/2. So I was just like, what is it about this?
Every
This,
time you PB, someone's doing a little
oh,
better.
it's crazy. And then, but so then I was just a walk on like you at UCLA. And I remember asking the coach, like, what does it take to get a scholarship? And he's like, he just laughed. I was like, what? He's like, well, if you jump 7'2", we'll talk. So
Wow.
right after I jumped 7'2", that sophomore year, I was sitting in his office the next Monday and he's like, oh, you want some money? And I go, yeah, that'd be nice. But, it's a weird world now because you really, I think it's going to be a push almost towards multis, both, yourself, Hep, and Dex, because I need somebody who's either going to kind of combine all their athleticism into one big event, or maybe even we can use them in a bunch of the open events and have them do, the Hep at the conference, right? And all that. So you become a more valuable commodity, right?
Sure. Yeah. And like, I'm so grateful to CSU for seeing that potential in me. I didn't see it in myself. I was just so happy to kind of get out of New Mexico. And I remember Coach Bedard, the head coach, saying, we're giving you this partial scholarship, but I'm letting you know this is based on your potential and what you're going to do. It's not based on where you're at now. And he's
Right.
like, make that clear. And so, yeah, I'm very grateful to them because they took me in as a very developmental athlete, and
Mhm.
they're still doing that a lot, which is great.
Yeah, that's another fun topic, we can get lost on sometimes is the whole support system thing, because I didn't know that till I was done at UCLA. Like I said, in '86 was my senior year. I never redshirted. I kind of went straight through. I don't think they really cared about it one way or the other because like I said, I came in and I think when I walked on at 6'10" and 3/4, I was number 7 on the depth chart. So it was like they were just going to watch you sink or swim. And it wasn't
Yeah.
like, oh, you had a lousy freshman year. Why don't we redshirt you? They're like, whatever. So that was kind of a wasted year that I never got back. But it was like you get that training room, you get the trainers themselves when you roll your ankle or you do something like that, you get the ice whirlpool, you got like all
So
these
many
things that
resources.
when
Yeah.
you're out of the university, like once I had left and I was on my own, it was like you don't realize how easy it was, to just
Yes.
get done with your classes, make your way down to the track. It's a whole different universe, when you're out there on your own. So I'm sure you're well more experienced with that. Um, how long have you been out of Colorado State? You graduated, I'm assuming, and then
Yes. Yeah, so it's been 2 years. I graduated 2023. I was in college during COVID, so I took a fifth year
Mhm.
with you. And then my plan was initially just stay out and train at Colorado State. I loved my coach there, Coach Ryan Bailey. He was willing to train me post collegiately, which was great.
Mhm.
So I kind of signed a lease in Fort Collins. I stayed out there. And then he took a great job opportunity at Georgia halfway through the year. So
Right,
very happy for him. But then also at the same time, I was just kind of there training by myself then.
right,
It was kind of left to train on my own, which was pretty hard. And I knew that if I wanted to do this post collegiately, I needed to create some type of environment around me that was similar to what you just mentioned of like having a support team, having people to train with, having a coach.
yeah,
And I was kind of left with none of that. And it was really difficult. I did my first year out there, and I knew that if I wanted to continue doing this, I needed to make some changes. So that's when I got in touch with my friend Erin. She was a heptathlete at Duke.
hmm
Um, we competed a lot together, and I asked her kind of about her training situation. Came out here and visited her, and now I'm kind of like full force. I moved out here in August, training with her coach from college, Sean Wilborn, and training with her. And there's kind of a whole group of post collegiates. There's Olympic sprinters that train out here. We can use the weight room. It's kind of, I have this whole community around me, which has been awesome. It's made
yeah,
like such a huge difference. So, something I would recommend to people who are trying to do it post collegiately is create a team around you
hmm
because you can't do it by yourself.
yeah, for sure. So you moved out to the East Coast. You're at Duke.
Yeah, yeah. So I moved out to North Carolina in like end of July. So I kind of went through a whole season last year, my first post-collegiate season, and now I'm going through a whole another season here.
Right.
So it's definitely made a huge difference.
Awesome. And so what are the goals then, long term? I know this is we talk about this all the time. My mentor, Alan Hankel, is a very a top level coach. He's worked with, Olympians and he worked with Doug Nordquist when Doug jumped, 236 and he's got a real wealth of knowledge and background and experience. And we're always just talking about how the world of track and field. I mean, this just happened to me a week or so ago. I was looking for a meet and I don't even remember. I was looking on my phone, my ESPN Sports app for the UCLA college baseball game. And I had trouble finding that, but I was like, okay, there's Major League Baseball. Okay, that's no good. Then it's like college sports. that was no good. Then it was like other college sports. I'm like, okay. And then I finally found baseball. And I realized as I went through that there was no track and field anywhere on my ESPN sports app. I mean, I literally stopped and went back through and was like, okay, so we're lower than what, badminton and
Yeah,
tiddlywinks, like underwater tiddlywinks. Like I
yeah,
don't know where we are on the list, but it's not on this list. So, it's a difficult world to make any money in. And it really hasn't changed. I remember when I was in college, my roommate and I would sit up at night. My freshman year, I was rooming with a guy that I knew from high school. He was a triple jumper, I'm a high jumper, and we would just talk about, Olympic dreams, coming on the all-time list and then sport, blah, blah. I mean, all those things, right? And I was still, I mean, 1982, my freshman year, it's only what 6 years since Bruce Jenner had won the decathlon, right? And was on
yeah.
Wheaties box. I mean, we literally talked about winning gold medals and being on the Wheaties box, and making all
Sandbox.
this money and all that stuff. And it's like the trade secret of track and field is you don't make money unless you are the creme de la creme and top five in the world, maybe, and
Yeah,
it's like, how do you, in this day and age, I think it's a little bit better now because people can look at you and go, oh, look, she's pretty, she's this, she's smart, she's athletic, she's here, she's got this professional life because you and I did your thing. Are you still with OnForm? Do you do that?
yes.
So,
Yeah.
shout out, go ahead for OnForm.
Got on form, yeah.
So and all that, it's different. I think maybe more opportunities at least for some support as you continue on, in your athletic career. And if you're creative and everybody's talking about creating their own brand and pushing that out there, and it's awesome. I'm 62 years old and I'm still trying to make one, so with the
Yeah,
podcast and the, whatever, but it's like it's tough. I tell everybody else, I go, it's competitive business, just like anything else,
it is.
And when you're talking about entertainment dollar here in the United States of America, which has got to be the entertainment capital of the world, you are fighting. And in Southern California, it's even more ridiculous because people
Oh
can do
yeah.
anything with their weekend. I've heard Colin Cowherd talk about this. He's like, you are competing against, you got the Dodgers, the Lakers, you've got USC, UCLA, you've got, arts and movies, and, it's like, it's crazy. So, yeah, what you're doing is really, like you're saying, more difficult, but I think you're doing a wonderful job because I keep coming across you, on your feed and the things you're doing.
Yeah.
So what are the long-term goals? How long do you see yourself doing it? Do you see yourself coaching after? What are you going to do?
Yeah, so I think, well, one thing with heptathletes and decathletes, you really most of the time see them peak later. So, unlike a lot of other track events, you see kind of the best heps are nearing 30,
Hmm.
um, kind of in that gap, like 28 to 32.
Right.
Um, you see a lot of heps. That's when they're peaking. That's when the technique is coming together. I think that's the biggest thing. You can train and train, but across 7 events, it takes a while to kind of learn those techniques.
Sure.
So, my goal is through 2028 and then also kind of see where I'm at in 2028. And if I still have kind of a fight in me and I'm enjoying it, like I want to keep doing it as long as I can.
Hmm.
Um, but like you said, it is hard. It can be difficult kind of seeing, like I have a twin brother and he's kind of really developing his career. And my friends from high school and like, everyone's kind of going on different paths. And with track, a lot of people don't have, it's kind of hard to have a job and train.
Right.
So kind
Oh
of
yeah.
see that, like passing you in different ways. But I always remind myself, like, this is my life and it's my trajectory that I want to accomplish. And I've been really grateful to OnForm because I work for OnForm and they're flexible around my training. And so
Hmm.
I like finding something like that has been huge for me. It can be difficult, but I think like I am still kind of developing my career and I'm working for a company that I like, but then I'm also developing my athletic career. So
Right.
you can find a way to make it work. Definitely like try to do it. Everyone does it in different ways. I always like to ask people, so how do you do what you're doing? If I'm at a heptathlon or with competitors, I'm like, how are you doing this? Like, where do you
Yeah.
train? Do you have a job? And everyone kind of makes it work in different ways.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting that you're in the area too with, what you do. Like, I've had different athletes on before that were, going to be a lawyer or something else like that, and you're like, difficult double, right? Because you're like, you got to go to law school, you got to do this, you got to become an intern, like you said, that doesn't make for an easy schedule, and then, yeah, what the things that interest me about multis like yourself, Lexi, is that it's like you mentioned, so many disciplines. That's when you look at things like that, like the kids out here when they start, if they're interested at all, you're like, okay, well, we got to find you a javelin, B, a place to throw it, and C, a coach. And those
Yes.
aren't growing on trees out here because you may start throwing the javelin at the junior college level, but that doesn't mean that your junior college, your local junior college even has a javelin coach or somebody qualified to teach you, right? And that's just one of the many disciplines that you have to pick up. Your shot put is difficult, right? I think you can generally find a shot put coach, but so what inside your goals this 2028, if those of you that don't know the world of track and field very well, which is probably not you listening because this is kind of for track and field, but the Olympic Games are coming here to LA after what 16, what 84 was 16 years, and another 28 is what 44 years later. So we're 44 years later, and I'm so excited for you because if you can get it. First of all, I'm imagining they're going to do the trials in the Coliseum. If they don't do it in the Coliseum, I'm going to be disappointed because there's so much history, right? Then you've got two different Olympics that they've also done in the Coliseum. So I think for the first time, Oregon is going to be out of the loop finally, because I'm a
Well,
UCLA
yeah.
guy. I'm
And
like,
hopefully, because I don't think it can keep that many people there. Eugene is not equipped for
right.
that many people.
No, exactly. And you want to have a stadium of 100,000 people in there screaming and cheering, right? I don't know what the seating capacity is now. I know they've done some work, but it used to be well over 100. So,
Yeah.
that's all going to be a big, big deal. And we are here at the media capital of the US, if it's not, one of the three between LA and New York and Chicago, right? And just this huge, brand opportunity for you. And, and like you said, you're starting to get along to that perfect time where you're at your physical peak and all that. So, um, what do you see yourself needing to improve upon as far as your events go? Like where your strengths and weaknesses, and as you're doing this and kind of learning this new schedule, I'm sure is a little bit different, and competing at these higher level meets and all that. So just tell us how that's going and where you're thinking.
Yeah, what's cool is this past year, I feel like I've opened my eyes to how much more potential I have. I kind of struggled my last year of college a little bit. I had a great year the year before, and then I had all these expectations. And I had also been with the same coach for a long time. And I think kind of just changing everything, just uprooted almost every event for me. I'm looking at it in different ways.
Right.
Um, the training, my body's reacting differently to different training. So my speed is getting a lot better. Um, and I've always been kind of like a slower heptathlete, as far as like the hurdles and the 200. And I've seen great improvements there this year, which
Hmm.
is really motivating because sometimes you're like, okay, can I just not get any faster? Am I just always going to be like a slow heptathlete?
Right.
So things like that, I've been seeing kind of hints. I really don't want to say like a specific event because I know there's so much in each. So
Mhm.
I've seen like tremendous growth in my long jump this year.
Speed
And
dependent. Yeah, absolutely.
yes. Yeah. So even there, it's like I know I've seen this growth, but I also know like those jumps that I'm jumping, as even if they're PRs, I know they weren't my best jumps. Like,
Hmm.
so just kind of taking away at each event, I think is the goal, and just keep chipping away and seeing those baby improvements, and they
Right.
eventually lead up to a big hep. So
Yeah. Well, it's funny too because, to the uninitiated, I think everybody thinks, well, because you'll hear about them every once in a while, somebody will just have a meet where they're like four PRs or, just having a day, right? And it's like, it's kind of about that too, but at the same time, as you know, you'll have an event that was down. You just like,
yeah,
oh man, that was just crappy. And, it can either just completely screw you up or it depends on the type of person you are, right? You can use it as fuel. Go,
Yeah.
okay, I only made one height, in the high jump, and it's one of my better events. So now I'm, frustrated, and it's like, okay, can you channel that? Can you turn it around and
Yeah.
maybe PR an event that you weren't expecting to, and it is kind of a longer game, right? Because you have 7 events to
Mhm.
get through, and that's one of the trade secrets. I just started working. It's gonna be my 5th year coming up with Vanguard University, which was NAIA out here for a couple years, and we just moved up to the D2 level. But I didn't have any experience with HEPs or DEX, and all of a sudden I've got these athletes coming to me, and they're like, "We want you to help us with our high jump or our long jump or our pole vault," and you're like, "Oh, great." And you've never met a more dedicated group of athletes, number one. And for my mind, being a a creative minded high jump coach, but my brain is almost both too organized and unorganized. Like I have this growing outline in my head of all the things that I need to cover as a high jump coach. And
Yeah.
then, to say that I have it all organized and set up exactly the way I want it is not the case. But I do know what I'm doing when I'm training people. So I'm like, okay, we'll start here, we do this, blah, blah, blah. But man, those heps and decks, when they come to you, it's like they're like, okay, I'm going to come to you at 4:45. And we're going to work together for about 20 minutes, and then I got to
Yeah.
throw the jab, and I'm like going, all right, well, let's go. Like
Yeah. Man.
they,
Yeah.
they're telling me exactly what they need, what they want to work on, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. So it's always impressed me. I have yet to meet a hep or a deck who's just kind of like, oh, I don't really know what we're doing today, but I'm just going to go full speed and see what happens. I
Yeah.
never had that conversation, so
You have to like learn kind of how to optimize that time for sure.
mhm, absolutely. And then, my mind in this day and age, I think it's one of my favorite topics, is the world of overtraining. If
Yeah.
there's anybody's in danger of being overtrained, it's got to be one of, a hep or a deck. And as you get farther and farther along, I mean, I remember one of my years at UCLA. For some reason, we had a lot of Sunday meets this one year, like 2 or 3, and so the week just seemed longer, right? You had a Monday, you start working out, you're doing your week, and I learned quickly that man, 6 or 7 day work weeks are just for the birds. It's just like you can't push yourself that hard all the time. Now, when you're younger, you kind of can, and you still recover enough to kind of make it work, but I was dragging at the end of that year. I think it was my junior year, and I remember jumping 7-1 the first meet, and then I was like 7 feet, 7-1, but it was kind of a general downhill trend. It was like I'd never felt explosive, fast, bouncy. It was like, and then I talked with many athletes. Lee Balkin was one who was a 7'3" in high school, 7'4" guy for a long time. You say he'd pop a 7'5" here and there, but Lee always had bad ankles. He had this going on. He had that going on. Perfect high jump build, 6'4", 160 pounds, could run like a 46-second quarter mile. I mean, he's like this unbelievable athlete, but he was always a little beat up, and he couldn't take a pounding on his legs, and I remember right after he left, he jumped to 7'7" somewhere. And I go, what was the difference, Lee? And he goes, you want to know what honest truth? He goes, I didn't train as hard. And I was like, really?
Wow.
He's like, I was a little more rested. I wasn't as beat up, and it's like, there's a fine line. I'm sure you could go the other way and not train enough to have that edge, or, maybe all those years of heavy training just creates an amazing base that now you can kind of transition into it. You know what I'm saying? It's like
For sure.
yeah, of course, knowing all the variables, the differences in peoples and, Twitch types and who knows all the different things that we're talking about. But it's
There's so
like,
much. Yeah.
there's so much when the more you delve into it. But yeah, I keep thinking, and I'm not crazy about the term, but load management is really kind of it. Like we're talking about your season now. Your season is radically different than it was in college. I'm sure you don't start as early, you don't finish as early, right?
Yeah.
I hear people talking about all the time. I'm like, well, a high school season, like you're talking about Mount Sac. Mount Sac is really late in our high school season out here. It's like there's Arcadia, big high school meet, no junior college or world associations. Then the very next week you're at Mount Sac, which is where the high schoolers kind of take a back seat. They're still there. Everybody's, clapping, nice, but it's like nobody's really there for them. It's like that's kind of early, and then later in the day, all of a sudden, all the big guns start showing up, right? And so, but we go boom, boom, Mount Sac, and then it's a week off, and then it's the state run, man. It's CIF finals. It's this, it's that. It's every week is like either you either progress or you go home, and it's a grind. It's like a 5 week grind, but it's still done
Yeah.
almost before you guys start, because you're starting into your season, right? So yeah, it's different for sure.
Yeah, I think about that in college versus like my season now. And I actually like I would do the whole college season and then maybe go to US champs in August or July.
Hmm.
I just I remember being so burnt out and tired because like you said, it's like back to back to back every weekend.
Hmm.
I think I competed for like 6 or 7 weeks straight in
Oh,
college
yeah,
plus conference, plus NCAAs. So I remember being so burnt out, but right now I'm like just getting started, I feel like.
yeah,
Um, like I started my season in like February. I did some indoor meets here and there. I did indoor USAs, but still that was kind of just like dipping my toes in the water. I wasn't going like every weekend to a
right,
meet.
right.
So yeah, I remember doing Mount Sac in like April and I was like, this is so early. I'm not ready.
Yeah,
But we did what we could. And then now I feel like I'm finally getting like the wheels turning, which is
yeah,
crazy. It's like, yeah, it's July. So
right. Well, I'm excited to hear about your pickup in your speed, because that's another thing.
yeah,
Besides load management and making sure that you're at your healthiest, freshest, fastest, right, and least injured, where you're going to compete at these biggest meets, is to me the other trade secret of track and field is that everything, in my mind, is speed. And
yeah,
that will sound weird to someone to go, well, yeah, you're talking about track and field run. I'm like, yeah, but the best pole vaulters in the world, like Duplantis, is really fast, right?
exactly.
Your
Yeah.
best shot putters. I mean, Brian Krauser is fast for as big as he is. When he's spinning through the ring. The gal, I can never remember her name, and I apologize out loud because
Valerie,
she's fantastic. The discus thrower.
Valerie,
She is the fastest thing I've ever seen getting through the ring a couple times. And my coach Alan was telling me, he goes, what's different about her? And I said, he goes, the old school was, keeping that arm extended and swinging it around through there a couple times, like full extension, right? I always taught longest lever, pull, release, bam. I'm like, he goes, she actually pulls that arm in and it speeds her up as she's going through the ring. And I said, well, does she re-extend at the end or does she keep it short? And he's like, it's kind of still short through there, but she gets through there quicker. And I'm like, oh, okay. And every time I watch her, I'm like, it's just like, and that thing's just rocketing out of there. So I'm like, but it's speed, 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 speed. Even, I mean, this sounds ridiculous to the uninitiated maybe too, but the marathon is now routinely run in about 2 hours or less. And when you do the math, it comes out to sub 5 minute miles, 26 I mean, you break it down even lap by lap. I'm like, that means I'm running basically
Heck,
what, a minute and 15 seconds or
that's
less
yeah.
for every quarter mile. For 26 times 4 is what? That's over 100. I'm like, and you just keep running those? That's crazy. That's speed and endurance, right? It's like, oh my gosh. So it's a speed game. And now as your speed's gotten better, I'm imagining long jump. It's got to affect your javelin a little bit, right? It's got to affect your hurdles, your 200.
Yeah, so like I said, I naturally had some speed, but I wasn't like a fast hep. Like a lot of heptathletes get a lot of points in the hurdles and the 200, which I was not getting points there. I was
Hmm.
getting points from my power, which I'm a very powerful athlete. I was a power high jumper, which I'm
Right.
trying to kind of
Get a
get
little
away
more
from
speed.
a little
Yeah.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
But more recently, I think just with a new type of training that I'm doing and training with a heptathlete who's very fast, it's improved my speed a ton.
Hmm.
Um, my coach, unconventionally, some people might think this is unconventional, but we started sprinting like on day one in the fall. We got there in like mid-September is when I started this year, and we were in spikes sprinting. And I was
Hmm.
like, what's going on? I'm scared. Why are we sprinting right now? This is way too early. Like, I'm not used to this. But we started sprinting like from the go. And I think that's made a huge difference. All of
Hmm.
our training is very speed focused. And I have someone to run with. So we're kind of both fighting it out together
Yeah.
workout, and that's helped a ton. And I've just seen it translate into all of my events. I think especially the hurdle is 200, but then also the way that I run the 800 now is more speed based rather than endurance based, which I think has been huge for me. A lot of you can have like two different philosophies on the 800. It's either you're more of a distance runner, 800 runner, or
Right.
a 400 runner. Um, and all of our workouts are kind of tailored to the 400. And so now when I run the 800, it feels like I'm like forcing myself to run slower. And the whole thing feels slow.
Hmm.
Um, but it actually has improved my 800, which is really interesting
Right.
because the 800 isn't really a sprint, but when you have that speed, it just feels a lot slower, which is really
Right.
nice. It doesn't feel like you're sprinting the whole 2 hours.
Relativity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with, as we're talking about speed? Because I'm sure another trade secret of the Raise the Bar podcast is that what I've learned about track and field in the last 5 years is almost exclusively through Instagram, which may sound
Yeah.
silly to other people, but when I put in all my hashtags, I've got the hashtags that I followed originally: jump, jumper, jumping, plyos, speed, power, all of those kinds of things that I knew applied. And so what's 9 times out of 10 is coming through my feed are athletes like you training, different coaches with their philosophies on this and that and the other thing, these speed powder systems. I don't really pay attention to the advertisers too much, although I like the Nordstick stuff for
Mhm.
Nordics, and that stuff. There's little things that come up. And then I see this older guy one day talking about his sprint training techniques, and I'm listening to him. It's Tony Holler, and he talks about his philosophy is called feed the cats, and how all they do is run fast, but they recover almost completely all the time. The fast, he says the farthest they ever run is a 200 for his 200 guys and his 400 guys. Maybe the 100 guys also do that at certain points, but he's like the main part of the philosophy is just you can't get your nervous system to react and give you the top level speed if you're already tired. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I get that. And then, I'm thinking from the high jump world, like myself, and you're part of that world, obviously, because that's where you started, is, what's the length of our event? It's like 5 seconds. Okay. Well, 3 of those seconds is running at the bar, or four, and then you're up in the air. And it's like, okay, so how far does a high jumper have to run? And I had this argument with so many people. I'm like, 150s and 400s for me, they really don't exist. Maybe somewhere early in the season, blah, blah, blah. But for the most part, I'm like, what are the requirements of my event? Because I tend to be a sport, what do you call it? A sports specificist.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, once my training starts to peak, I want to have almost everything be very similar to something that I'm going to do. If I'm going to run in technique, then we're going to do running drills that are very specific to the high jump. And it may even involve you gathering and getting your arms ready in a certain sequence because that's what you're going to do. If we're going to do exercises once we get done with the power stuff, I mean, I'll quickly go from two legs to one because I'm
Yeah.
like, I can't find any place in the high jump where I use both legs at the same time. So a squat is as valuable as squats are. And I love squats. The first time I squatted over 400 pounds, that was the first year I jumped 7'2". I know how important power is, but I'm like, what about single leg power? What about single
Yeah.
leg squats, right? What about single leg hang cleans or, a snatch from the ground with a dumbbell with one arm and one leg?
Yeah.
So I'm like, these are the things that I keep looking at going, I think I'm a, single arm for the most part, until I do a double arm takeoff. So, that's of interest to me. So anyway, back to the original question was the Tony Holler thing. Have you seen any of the feed the cats philosophy, any of that in use?
Not as far as, sorry, like as far as what you just explained about his
Mhm.
philosophy, like sprinting under 200 meters.
Yeah, it's short sprints. The main statement that he said, I'll qualify a little better, is he said, and this is the thing that caught my ear. He said, endurance cannot produce speed.
Yeah.
Endurance does not produce speed. He goes, speed can produce endurance, but you can't do it the other way around. And so the idea there was that, the whole idea of interval training and all that, where you start varying the interval and the rest,
Yeah.
shorter, right? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, Okay, yeah, but for me, maybe it's just because I'm a lazy high jumper. So I'm just like, I don't really want to run that much, but if I do, I'll run 40 meters or 50 meters. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can utilize that in the fall to get in general shape.
Hmm.
Um, as you said, as you get closer to the season and you're starting to peak, I don't really see a need for that because you should be in aerobic shape to get through a high jump competition. You should be in
Hmm.
aerobic shape to get through a heptathlon. If you're not at that point, I don't really know what to tell you because if you should have been like building that base all year.
Right.
So I agree with that. I think I've seen it this year versus like two different types of training I've been on. I think they both benefited me in very different ways. One was a little bit more like aerobic based, and this one's a little more speed based. And I think maybe just changing the stimulus really helped me. I'm not going to say one is better than the other.
Hmm.
Um, but for me, I've noticed huge changes. And I think specifically for like high jump and long jump, like you said, it's like a 5 second event.
Right.
Um, so why are you doing like I don't think you need to be focusing as much on that aerobic side of
Right.
things.
Right.
So
Well, you still have, like you said, then the weird part is, and I'm sure you're going through this in your head. You got to have it in your planning sessions and your thinking sessions with your coach, right? And how do we attack this event? Because the 800 is the albatross in the field, right? Everything else is just boom, right? And then
power.
from what I get, it seems like 90% of most heps and decks, either the 8 or the 1600 meters is just almost disregarded in their training. It's
Yeah.
like I'm just going to gut it out at the end and pray for the best. There's like,
Yeah.
well, what's your strategy? They're like, I don't know. I don't know what I
Yeah.
have left. It's kind of hard to strategize because, how do you get used to that? The only way you get used to it is to run one like you're doing and get to the very end and go, okay, when I feel like this, I need to do this. And it's like, but yeah, I don't really like feeling like this because that means I've already done 6 events and I'm really tired.
Yeah.
So that's that sports specificity thing where you're like, how do I learn how to deal with, the way I feel when I'm getting ready to run that 800 at the end?
Yeah, I will say some things that have prepared me are like the awful workouts we have to do for the 800 because we'll be at practice, we'll do hurdles, we'll do shot put or something. We'll already be out there for like 2 hours, and then our coach is like, okay, run two all out 500s basically, or something like
Mhm.
that. And so you get that fear, that anxiety before the event,
Right.
and you have to learn how to deal with it. I used to really like I was shaking on the 800 line. I wanted to throw up before, and now I
Right.
think you still get nervous, but when you know that you've put in the work and you know that you've done all these hard workouts that are probably harder than the actual 800 itself, then you
Hmm.
have a little bit more confidence. And that's taken like a really long time to build. Obviously, when you're young and you're just kind of developing, the 800 is a lot worse. And now it's definitely starting to get better. Not to say that it's easy, but you get used to it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm curious because like you, I think I know when I talk about high jump, I was power guy. I was never that fast.
Yeah.
I was fast when I was 12. I remember when I was 12 in the sixth grade, when I was shorter legs, I had decent turnover, and we had this thing at our school, like a 50-yard dash that was
Hmm.
right there on the blacktop, and periodically, kids, you're burning energy all the time. Oh, let's go race. And so, okay, yeah, I remember being pretty fast still as a sixth grader. When I started growing and my legs started getting longer for whatever reason, I just couldn't turn over the wheels as fast. So I remember my senior year, I played football as a free safety, which is another great tradition. Most high jumpers seem like if they do anything on football, it's free safety and or receiver. So I was a receiver, but we never threw the ball. So I played defense. And, this is in the dark ages before they liked throwing the football. But I remember my senior year when we ran 40 times. I
Hmm.
ran a 5 flat 40. I mean, I had like Tom Brady at the combine kind of speed, and they showed Tom Brady just struggling with it 6'5" and no turnover, like 5'2" 40. I'm like, yeah, I looked a lot like that. And then I remember my senior year, I was very fortunate, and big shout out to John Smith, the fantastic Olympic, sprint coach that, took many of my UCLA teammates and friends to being gold medalists, Mike Marsh and Kevin Young and all these guys. And John's one of the rare guys that was not only a high level athlete himself, who then became probably an even better, coach. And he was nice enough. And, I mean, yeah, I'm a UCLA guy, but I was like, I'm not a sprinter, but I remember asking him like, how can I get quicker? And literally, I mean, he might have spent 3 or 4 different times giving me some real pointed instructions. And the thing that I realized was the cycling was what, my legs was the way that I would start running, and it would just take too long to get going. So
Yeah.
I was basically taught how to get moving quickly, with that chop, 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 push, push, push. Don't pick your feet up right away. Get moving forward with those shorter steps that are more powerful. Because he's like, you're strong enough. If you're squatting 400 pounds, you've got power, and you can use that power to get going. So that's something I've been kind of modifying in my thinking with the kids, because I was taught by my jump coach that I need to cycle my feet. And I
Yeah.
know that's true. High, long, triple, pole vault, I don't care what it is. If you
Yeah.
are running faster as you're going to do whatever it is you're going to do, pole vault, javelin, you're cycling your feet. And if anything, it accelerates through with a high cycle.
Mhm.
It's like I've seen it play out over and over again. So I was like fighting two things. And
Yeah.
it was just very few athletes. I remember watching Brandon Stark from Australia. He's got like a 14 or 16 step approach. But when he stands there and is going like this, and all of a sudden he takes off, like he's rocket fast and cycling immediately. So I'm just like, okay,
Yeah.
that's exceptional. In my experience, a lot of times you see those power guys, what is the first thing they do is drop down low and
Yeah.
push, 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 and then they stand up and start cycling, right? So I'm interested to see how these speed changes came around with you. What did you notice, technique wise? What was it that changed?
Well, I will say I noticed it the most in my hurdles and my long jump,
Hmm.
the turnover. So I like 3 years ago switched to a 7 step in the hurdles out of the blocks because
Hmm.
I'm super powerful, big long pushes. And I started PRing a ton in the hurdles that year. But again, I was also that year was kind of my breakout year for the heptathlon. I PR'd in almost every event. So I assumed that this like 7 step is what kind of fixed my hurdles. I was like, this works. But I actually this year switched back to an 8 step. And my coach's reasoning behind that is that in between the hurdles, you have really fast turnover. And kind of like the difference between a 7 step and an in between the hurdles is so drastic. Like you have these really big long pushes, and then you want to turn over your feet really quickly. So I actually switched back to an 8 step, which is still, I'm kind of learning and adjusting and trying to learn that turnover. But I think it's really helped my hurdles. I've PB'd in like all of my races this year pretty much.
Wow.
And then long jump as well. I feel my feet turning over quickly towards the board versus before it was just kind of like sprint, big long pushes and try to like
Yeah.
propel myself out. It was very like power based. And now I'm trying to like integrate the two together,
Yeah.
um, and trying to use that speed at the end of the runway and then also use
Right.
it in between the hurdles. So I've noticed kind of a big difference and it's still kind of working on it, but I think eventually it's gonna really help.
Yeah, that's another thing I find so interesting, and I don't have the time. If it was my only job, so maybe after I retire from school teaching, I think about it sometimes, because I was taught as an undergraduate at UCLA in kinesiology that your velocity in your event, your speed is a product of stride length times stride rate. Everybody gets the basic thing. I said, if Lexie and I are racing and we have the exact same stride rate, you're
Mhm.
taking 10 strides for 10 seconds, let's say, stride per second. Okay, this is way too slow, but just for simplicity's sake, you go, we're exactly matched as far as the synced up movements. Now, if you're taking a 1 inch longer stride than I am, and we're completely matched up, after 12 strides, you're a foot ahead, right?
Yeah,
And therefore moving faster. So the first relationship is a longer stride will beat a shorter stride if you're matching frequency. But
yeah. It's
as
hard
you're
to
talking
do.
about, what if
Yeah.
I change the frequency? What if I pick up my rate? And so I tell all my kids, I go, look, when you're standing here at 0, your stride rate and your stride length are both at 0. And as you get going, they're both going to pick up. but it depends on which one you're leaning on, right? You can
Yeah.
get to a place where you're taking too long of a stride and you can't get your turnover to match.
Yeah.
And you can also get to a place where you're taking too choppy of steps that are super quick, but you feel like you're running really fast and you're not. And I've
Yeah.
had a lot of kids do that as they're doing coming up to the high jump. I'm like, look, you start chopping and you're thinking like you're being aggressive and everything, and your speed is dropping. Even
Yeah.
when the rate is picking up, you're actually losing speed. So it's like it's a really tough, thing to figure out. I keep saying, of course, the magical formula is to find the max on both, where you get the highest, output, right?
Find
And
balance.
that's the game, yeah. To, can I, like you're saying, I was thinking immediately when you said you went from 7 to 8. I'm like, okay, so they must be a little bit faster on turnover and a little bit shorter. And then
Yeah.
my thought was now that you are getting to the first hurdle faster, I'm assuming, or you guys wouldn't make that change, or is it that frequency? Because my next thought was, are you three-stepping, or are you alternating, or are you just hitting the same leg every time?
Yeah, so I'm three stepping. And I'm still learning this eight step and I still struggle with it. I'm not gonna say I'm the fastest person to the first hurdle, but I wasn't with my seven step either. But I do think my coach is right in the sense that it matches the rhythm of the race. So
Hmm.
it's a lot quicker steps. And I feel like I'm going nowhere, but I'm actually like with the rest of the race versus before
Right.
it was these big long pushes and then I had to turn it over. So
Right.
yeah, I've noticed a big difference there. It's interesting that you're talking about all of this, like the stride length and power and speed and everything, because I think those have been like the biggest changes for me this year. And it's also like the biggest headache for me because
Right.
I'm like, I've always relied on my power and my long stride, and like I'm a very like lanky person.
Hmm.
And I've also been told I'm a huge overstrider. So like trying to rewire that in my brain and trying
Yeah.
to how to use that power, but in an efficient way
Hmm.
is something I think I could use across every event. So
It's difficult. I've got some guys that, stop swinging their arms as they're running through the turn. I'm
yeah,
like, dude, you can't run with just your legs. You're
no.
getting ready to jump, but you can't just carry your arms with you. I said, they're just baggage, like let's swing them. I said, watch Mahuchich, from Ukraine. I mean,
Yeah,
he's up here, right? Just boom, boom. And you talk about long strides, but at the same time, it's so hard with these high jumpers because when I watch Kerr, who won the gold just last summer, he's 6'7".
yeah,
When he's really running fast, it's hard to tell because his
yeah,
strides are a mile long, so you're like, is he really running that fast? It's like, I'm not sure, but when you see him turn it into lift, like, well, yeah, he's running pretty fast. It just doesn't look that way. And then I always remember, when you watch quarter milers with that long stride, you're sitting there watching them and they don't look like they're just, it's just they've got that rhythm established here, 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 but you're still, I watch them go around the track and it seems like you're turning pretty fast, as you're watching them go around one lap. They're
yes,
really
it
moving,
almost like looks slow if you're just looking
Hmm.
at the athlete, but then you're seeing them move and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, so fast because they're so smooth and relaxed.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're seeing that probably the emphasis on the stride length at that point, because I've established the rhythm and now I'm just, chewing up the ground. But yeah, it's fun listening to you talk about stride lengths too, because I was very fortunate. I tell everybody that wants to listen, or even those that don't, because I just like talking, I guess. But when I was at UCLA, I was around so many good athletes. It's like it's not that UCLA doesn't still produce great athletes, and we do. But man, when I was there, I mean, literally on campus, Reggie Miller playing basketball, Troy Aikman playing football. Every sport had their stars. Our track and field team was very, very good. My senior year, we finished eighth. The next 2 years, we won the nationals for the last two times. It's been quite a while now, but it's like all these athletes, and like I said, future gold medalists that were on the team. I remember when I was a senior, I think Kevin Young was only 1 year behind me, might have been two. But I remember he was as a sophomore, we were high jumping and I'm jumping, we didn't jump that high in practice, but the bar would be up at 6'4", 6'6", maybe 6'8" every once in a while. And he comes over, the bar's at 2 meters, and he literally ran up and two-footed front dove over it at 6'6". And I'm like, first of all, he's about 6'4", 6'5", but we called him Spider-Man. He was tall and thin. And I'm just like, you watch athletes do things sometimes. I'm just like, oh my, who just comes and front dives over 6'6" like that, So, the talent and, all that stuff is off the charts. I forget how I got started down that road, but the stride length and all that.
Yeah.
That thing there, I remember listening because Kevin was starting to get trained by John Smith towards the end because John was usually just the sprinters guys, but Kevin is that hybrid that that you have to be able to run a really fast quarter and then jump over the hurdles along the way, which is really, really hard. I have the utmost respect for the 400-meter intermediate hurdlers. I think that
Yeah.
has got to be like the toughest event anybody's ever invented because when
Yeah.
you're dying at the end and you're trying to keep your speed and hit those last couple hurdles and not fall over, and on and on. I remember watching Greg Foster, who you may not know, but he was a great UCLA hurdler, was always battling it out with Ronaldo Nehemiah and all these greats. And he broke his forearm one year at the trials. He fell and broke his arm, and they actually casted him up. And I forget if he fell in it. I don't know how he could have kept running. I just remember he kept competing. It wasn't, it was like, I don't know how you could fall and still qualify, but I have a memory of him, from one meet maybe to a next came back with a cast on his arm and is still running the hurdles. I'm just like, man, what if you fall again? But the hurdlers are tough, and then that whole thing, like you're talking about, it's almost like I remember they were talking about a certain number of strides for Kevin,
Yeah.
bigger stage, and he was longer legged. So I think there was a switch for a while between, was he alternating, that wole thing. And, when you don't know anything about it, to me, that's all like, might as well be listening to two rocket scientists talk about what it is that they're doing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how did you get started real quick? I don't want to take too much more of your time, but the thing that brought us interestingly together the first time, I can't remember if it was just, I remember following you. And I think, did I ever do a post for you? I think I might have got you to send me videos.
Yeah.
And I know everybody liked you because, whenever I get a good subject and everything, and, I think, I don't know if people think that I actually coach you or whatever, but I just like showcasing athletes. So,
Yeah.
you're posted well, and then somehow the on form came up as we were talking, and we
Mhm.
actually did have a like kind of a business conversation about that because I'm always looking for something more useful as far
Yeah.
as breaking down somebody's videos. I like to draw lines on them and show them the angles, and stuff like that. My dream scenario is to have force plates underneath the takeoff,
That would be
cameras at
amazing.
two or three different angles, an overhead camera,
Yeah.
all these different things that I would love to see. And I'm still trying to position myself to where somebody will recognize that I'm a quote unquote expert and do the play by play and the color at the Olympics because I listen to these people talk about the high jump. I'm just like, oh my God, they have no idea what they're talking about at
No,
all. It's
that's
like,
true.
I don't know where they got these two, but let's get, I would love to go there with me and my coach Alan or Doug Nordquist or whatever and just go, all right, let's
Let's
break down this
dive in.
high jump, because it's a lot more interesting. And of course, unless it's the Olympics, then you just get an occasional high jump in the broadcast and they, skip all over
Yes.
the place. So,
Yeah. So OnForm, I started with them when I graduated at CSU. We actually used OnForm when I was an athlete at
mhm.
CSU. I'll explain what it is really quick for people who don't know, but it's a video analysis app that you can record within the app, kind of share it with your athletes. So you can invite them into the app. Everything's kind of locally stored on the cloud, which was huge for us in college because we have a huge team. We're all sharing videos, taking videos. And then we have tons of tools in there that you can kind of mark up videos with angles that you can draw. We have a timer tool, side by side comparison, things like that. So
Love that. Yeah.
if you've ever heard of like Coach's Eye or Huddle Technique, we're kind of the new version of that as both of those are kind of fizzling out.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's really cool technology. I loved using it when I was an athlete at CSU, and now I still use it with my coach at Duke. We actually used it while we were in Spain during our meet. Our friend was recording us, and then he could see the videos live, kind of mark them up, or send a message really quick and kind of tell us what to do. So it's really helpful for like remote coaching, live coaching,
Mhm.
um, things like that. But the co-founder is from Fort Collins. So he had kind of heard that the track team was using the platform and it was really heavily focused on golf, kind of. That's just kind of where they
Right.
broke into. We make a lot of our developments on the golf swing, and then it kind of tapers out to each event or each
Right.
different sport. So I got connected with him, and at first it was kind of initially like we don't know anything about track and we want to know if it would be helpful in this space, and we know you're trying to pursue this like professionally. So at first initially we were almost like gonna figure out a sponsorship or something like that for me to continue competing, but then I got more involved with the company, and now I'm kind of their track and field representative, and I get to show the app to coaches and take them through demos and go to track and field conventions. And it's been really cool. I go to a meet anywhere and I bump into coaches that I know that I've talked to, people like
Hmm.
you. Actually in Spain last week, I bumped into a guy who I did a demo with. He coaches Norvitz, the
Mm.
heptathlete.
Right.
So yeah, it's just been great because it ties into my life really well. I really believe in the value of it. Um,
Hmm.
so it's not just a job to me. It's like this is
Right.
something that I love, and it's something like I love talking to coaches and learning more about the sport, obviously. So
Yeah. Well, what is it they say? I love that saying. It says if you do something you love, you never work a day in your life.
yeah,
No,
exactly.
it's like it's like, oh yeah, why wouldn't I do this? I think about that. My whole love of video stuff is, I'm sure it stems from the fact that, I'm a visual and I love watching sports, period, because the number of sports is kind of mind-boggling. My wife would go, "What are you watching?" It's like, "I'm watching the US Open." Which one? Golf, tennis? Like, yeah,
Yeah,
both. It's like football, basketball, baseball. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot about everything. So it's like I'm one of those guys that's looking for, first of all, the universals in training, levers and speed and angles and all that stuff. And then the other part was in high school, and this is again early 80s, and this technology was young, but I remember watching a video. One of the Olympics was coming up. It was either 76 or 8. I want to say 80, probably 80. But they had somebody was doing a literal breakdown of a stick figure hitting a volleyball. And it was
uh-huh.
literally like a black DOS screen with a green stick figure, with a triangle for a torso and stick arms, and I'm
Yeah,
watching this swing in slow motion. I'm like, that is so cool. I'm like, you
yeah,
can put somebody on a screen like that. And of course, things have gone crazy since then. But even then, in high school, the guy that I was chasing as a senior, he was a 6'10" high jumper both his junior and senior year. And his senior year, he was in great shape from basketball. He jumped 6'10" like 4 times in the first 6 weeks of the season. It's crazy. And his dad had one of those RCA camcorders.
hmm,
This thing was 50 pounds if it was an ounce. You have to stick it on your shoulder. You're like an official cameraman, basically. And it's, recording on those terrible VCR tapes, but it was like his dad was videoing him. I'm like, your dad's videoing this? He's like, yeah. I go, can I come watch? He's like,
okay,
yeah,
what do you
let's come
want?
over. So I came over, we started watching video, and my high school coach was a great coach. I mean, he trained us. We used to bound up and down the bleachers on one leg. We did all kinds of stuff. But I also remember we just kind of jumped on our own. Like he
Yeah,
trained us as far as lifting and running and bounding stuff. But I don't remember a lot of input on technique. But I learned by watching Dave, and I learned by watching other athletes. And then all of a sudden, here's this tool where I can watch myself. And I don't know. I tell people sometimes, like, I think there was just a little bit of some kind of maybe a DNA talent for biomechanics in my head, because I could see stuff. I would be like, oh, if you're leaning like this, you go like this. If you're leaning
yeah,
like this, you do this. It's like I start looking at things, breaking it down, and I was like, I went from jumping 6'2" as a sophomore to jumping 6'8" that year. And a lot of it, I think, was watching videos all the time with Dave. Because not only were we watching our jump videos, and we videoed some practices, but mostly it was meet stuff. And the
yeah,
meet stuff, of course, is super valuable. I always tell people, I go, meet sessions are like regular sessions on steroids, because you don't have that same kind of pop usually in a practice.
for
But
sure.
yeah, so I mean, that whole thing is so awesome that you get a chance to. I would just be eating that up, like, just, oh yeah,
Yeah,
how do you develop this? Is it, what can we tweak? I'm sure they
yeah.
love getting your input, for
Well,
training.
it's amazing. Like the developments that our team is making, is it's crazy. They've trained the golf swing. We've recorded thousands and thousands of videos of golf swings,
Mhm.
and now they've trained the AI to detect a human body, and then you can actually look at it in 3D. So it's gonna, after you record a video of someone taking a golf swing, it shows up as a 3D rendition, visualization of kind of what that swing looks like.
Yeah.
And they're tracking the hand path and everything like that.
Yeah.
So it's cool. It's starting to roll out like slowly to other sports because we have to train it on something initially, but
Right.
it's amazing to see the technology that our team puts together
Yeah.
and how helpful it is to people. And like you said, like I'm a visual learner as well. I remember in college, we finally kind of started sharing videos with each other and I could see them after I jumped. Initially, we didn't really use a lot of video. And I felt like it helped so much. And I love being able to go back and compare like
Hmm.
my high jump now versus like
Oh
in
yeah.
college. So it's cool to kind of see that progression as an athlete. And then also as a coach,
Yeah.
it's really cool. So
Awesome. Well, hey, Lexi, I appreciate you getting up. I know it's not as early.
no,
Well,
yeah,
I was up at 7, but that's not too bad because I'm a school teacher, so I'm usually up. But it is summertime. But I appreciate your time. I'm a huge fan of what you're doing. I hope the best for you coming up here. What is Give us a quick before we get out of here. What's the schedule like? You mentioned the U.S. champs, and what does it take, to keep stepping up to these next levels as you're knocking on these doors?
yeah, I mean, keep doing what I'm doing. I'm seeing that kind of work pay off. And
Hmm.
so the goal is to just keep plugging away. I have about a month until US champs. So hopefully put together a good one there. I know that I'm kind of priming my body. It's starting to get ready. So
Hmm.
I just really want to be able to kind of showcase what I have done this year. I had a great hep last weekend, but I know there was a lot of spots that I still missed points.
Yeah.
So the dream is to be able to put that all together at US Champs and kind of see where that takes me, and then kind of see when the season will end after that. And
Right.
yeah, keep doing
What do you
the same.
need to do there in order to say get to the world championships this year?
Yeah, so top three will get you to worlds, and then you have to have a high enough world ranking.
Right.
So that's kind of why I went to that meet in
To
Spain.
Spain. Right.
Yeah, to boost that. So yeah, that's the goal. Put it together there and make the world champs team.
Where are you on the list as far as the U.S. is concerned, and then on the world? Where's your current standing?
Yeah, so my going into USA's, I think I'm like top six. Um, and that's for this year. And
Hmm.
then my hep last weekend was like 26th in the world this year.
Hmm.
Um, but my world ranking is 40th. So that's kind of it. The world ranking system, I can go into that for a while, but it's a little confusing. I'm starting to learn kind of how it works. So you have to be top 24 ranked on the world rankings to make the
Getting
world
there.
championship.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm kind of slowly plugging away at that. I think I started the season at like 70, moved down to like 60, 58,
Right.
and 40. So hopefully US champs will be good. And
Yeah.
yeah,
You're trending upward, as they
yeah,
say.
exactly.
Awesome. Well, hey, let me know if there's anything I can do for you. I would love to, I love breaking down video, like you said, and I
Yeah,
have certain things that I look at, as people are jumping, different lines that I draw through, I treat you like a stick figure with angles, right? And I'm just,
yeah,
okay, here's your lean back angle. Here's what you're doing at takeoff. So if you would like me to, as part of a promotion, I would love to, do a breakdown of your high jump in particular,
yeah,
and have that information both available to you and then show you off to everybody on Instagram and all that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to break out with what's always locked away in my head, which is, I use it with my athletes, but I'm like, I think, you just need to get this stuff out, and I never have
yeah,
the time. But that would be fun. And then we'll definitely promote the podcast between the two of us. You have a good following on Instagram as well. So I'm going to produce this much quicker than usual. I Every once in a while I'll do a podcast and I just It's like it's in the books,
It's
got it
just there.
recorded, and I forget. I got to
Yeah.
take it back through CapCut and make sure there's nothing in there that I can't get rid of, or
Yeah.
sometimes weird things happen. Like in the middle there, I don't know if you could hear it, but a trash truck came by, and I had the
Oh
window
yeah.
open, and I was like, "Oh crap!" Like,
Got
I'm
a
moving
dog
forward.
barking
I don't
in
know
the
if you can see me.
background
I'm
as
like
well.
closing the window real quick.
That's okay.
But it's like, those are those things later you're listening, like, what the heck is all that noise? I'm like, oh yeah, that trash truck came by. So I got to cut that out. But yeah, I'll get it produced quickly. And
Yeah, I'll
if
send you
you,
some video as well.
yeah,
I high jumped last weekend and I tied my PB. So but it felt like not good. So
right,
which is
right.
good. So I'll send that video to you because I was looking at it the other day and I was like, dang
Yeah, that'd
it.
be
Like,
great. I'm really like that, straight down the bar shot, but I'll
okay.
take anything I can work with. And like you said, send me your best stuff. And I know when I say I don't even care if you want to see that comparison even from a year ago or a couple
Yeah,
years back, if you used to specialize, I don't even know if you have your high school stuff, but
I do.
it's more prevalent now. I literally have no video of me ever. So I'm
I
looking
wish
back
you
like I can't
did.
even find VCR tapes. So I'm like, I don't
Yeah,
even remember. I know what kind of jumper I was, but I tell people, I go, well, you should be leaning at this angle. Like, what angle did you lean at, coach? I'm like, I don't know.
I literally don't. You just felt the vibes
Yeah,
instead of looking.
something. I did watch video. It's just like the technology is so bad. The tapes don't last. They're grainy. They did used to film our meets in the, 8 millimeter, tick, 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 tick. And when you stopped that film, it was clean. But that was in the film room at UCLA. So I don't have those anymore either. But well, hey, Lexi, I'm a big, big fan of yours. I love what
Thank
you're
you.
doing. Best of luck, coming up. I love that top six in the US when you're got to be in the top three means you're knocking on that door already and climbing from 70 to 40 with a 26th you just mentioned, which means you're getting real close to that top 25 or 24 in the world. And then you get to travel and go to
Yeah.
Spain. I'm so jealous.
Yeah,
Spain.
yeah, so fun.
Where were you in Spain?
I was on the Canary Islands, an island called Tenerife. So it's actually closer to Africa than it is Spain. So it was
Okay.
like super dry, close to the equator,
Uh-huh.
um, high UV index, and it was beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful.
Awesome.
But
Well, hey, best of luck. Stay healthy. When is
thank you.
this? When is this? You said it's a month. So what is the date that we're looking for?
Yeah, July 31st is the first day of heptathlon, and then the second day is August 1st. So US Champs is happening that whole week, but those are the days of the hep.
Awesome. And where is that meet?
Eugene.
Yeah, I was gonna say Eugene. I hate
It's
giving the
not my
Ducks.
flights. So
I respect the heck out of it, but I hate
it's
giving the Ducks
yeah.
any credit. I'm a UCLA guy. I'm like,
Yeah.
Oregon
And
again? Come on. Yeah.
yeah, not enough like Airbnbs. Flights are expensive as well.
Yeah. I was trying to get up there for the Nike Nationals were just, last week or something.
Yeah.
I had a couple kids that were going. And one kid in particular, Jordan Randall, I've been working with his dad and him on video analysis for a while now. And he's jumping 7'2" and he's like 5'7". This
Uh-huh.
is amazing.
Oh,
And they're like, we're coming. And I was like, I want to go meet you guys. And I hadn't planned on it. And everything was so expensive. It was ridiculous. Couldn't
yeah,
feed, these flea bag hotels were like 250 a night and
exactly. It's
flight wasn't cheap. I'm just like, oh man, I couldn't make it happen.
yeah.
So. Well, how do we find you on TV? I'm hoping it's gonna be on TV. Is it gonna be
Yes.
delayed or?
It's usually on NBC/Peacock. So I'm hoping that's where it is.
Okay,
I think it will be, but not, I can't guarantee that. It
right.
should be on Peacock or like ESPN Plus or something.
Yeah.
Um,
Good luck finding it on the ESPN Sports app because I
yeah,
looked for an hour one day. But
I know.
all right, so those of you that are out there getting ready to watch Lexi, she's ready to kick butt and she's hoping that it's on Peacock. So do your research ahead of time and we'll see you in action. All right,
Okay,
you go, girl. You're awesome.
thank you so much.
Thanks for spending the time. Appreciate you.
Bye.
Bye. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up here on our latest episode of Raise the Bar. Once again, I'm your host, Troy Haynes, former collegiate level high jumper, longtime coach, aspiring to be a great coach and coach national and Olympic champions. Still trying to get athletes to buy in to what I feel is my level of expertise, but if we ever get one, you'll know. Um, And we had a chance to talk with Lexie Keller, who is an amazing heptathlete. She's continuing to hone her craft and is, as you heard, is climbing up the charts, trending upward, as we say. She's moved, from farther down up to being in the top 6 in the U.S., which, as you heard her say, if she can finish in the top 3, she can go to Worlds. Most likely, I would guess if she does move from 6th to 3rd, that would be a better overall HEP score, which would also conceivably, since it's a big meet, move her up the world standings as well, which she said she's climbed up to about as high as 40, although her most recent competition in Spain would have been about a number 26. So she's got all those things going for her as she gets into the season. Do look for an upcoming video analysis post. We're going to break down Lexie's technique and show you her high jumping. Those of you that are specifically high jump and or pole vault oriented, raise the bar tends to sound like those two events, even though I have coached all the jumps and the pole vault. Kind of a beginner at the pole vault or at the sprints and hurdles as well. I don't know that I could ever claim to be someone that knows a lot about everything. I think I know some things about everything, but there's some great coaches out there. The famous Tom Tellez, who worked with Carl Lewis and other great athletes. He was all over the road. He worked as a sprint coach, obviously jumps, long jumpers like Carl, high jumpers, pole vaulters. So he did sprint. I mean, the guy did everything. I'm nowhere near that prolific or knowledgeable, but I was also bummed that he left UCLA before I got there. So shout out there. But yeah, be watching. She's and she also the work that she's doing with OnForm. If you look that up, some very top end video analysis tools. She's using that as a kind of both a platform and a background and a support system for her and her training as well. So a lot of great stuff going on there. And we also later on today, I'm going to be doing another podcast, just throwing a shout out right now. My former coach, Alan Hankel, who coached me in my last year in 92, way before many of you were born. He and I are going to be talking with Greg Kish, who is an executive who works in advertising with the NFL. We're kind of approaching the whole how can we get track and field to be noticed more and promoted better. So we'll be doing that later on today. So until next time, keep raising that bar. We will talk with you later on today in another podcast. Of course, how quickly they get produced is another thing. But until next time, Troy Haynes signing off. Have a good one.